This Ertl casting is based upon the kind of escape vehicle that was integrated into the Batmobile in Batman Returns, starring Michael Keaton as Batman. The Batmobile shed its outer skin and formed this train-like vehicle, much more narrow than the actual Batmobile. I've been fascinated by the Batmissile ever since seeing it. I've wanted to build it in some form. I didn't realize there was a casting of it out there. But there is, this one by Ertl. In the movie, the Batmissile mode was activated in order to pass through a narrow alleyway. Now this build, as you can see, this casting, it's a Batmissile already. So there's not a lot I'm going to do to it other than pick out the detail that they kind of left hidden. The wheel structure on this is fantastic. I thought about trying to swap out wheels, and it's like, no way. Because what it has there is perfect. And so I knew I would just screw it up if I tried to swap the wheels out. Check out the back engine, the exhaust on the engine. It's just this little piece that clips on the back. Metal body, plastic base. That little rear engine exhaust piece is also plastic, in case that wasn't obvious. Stripped it with citrus strip, and was thrilled to see the detail that's on the casting. I mean, it's Batmissile. There's not a lot of detail. And as you know, the Batmobiles, especially recent Batmobiles, are dark, and there's not much, I don't know, not much popping out on those. I mean, when you think back to the 60s Batman, the Adam West Batman, and that Batmobile, that was black with the red stripes on it and red pinstriping on it and the bats on the side. And, that had a lot more flair to it. Trying to find the right word. Where, much more recent Batmobiles have just had an ominous look, an ominous dark look to them. One of my favorites being the Tumbler. But I've always been fascinated by the Batmissile because it's such a cool look. It's basically an engine. I'm honestly not sure how this is supposed to work, but it's basically a jet engine that I have to assume just has this little cockpit control area somehow built into the body. The casting itself was in really good shape. It did need some filing of some spots. Like there was a casting line, kind of a rough casting line above that cockpit area. But all in all, it wasn't in bad shape. And it's an odd casting to work with because it's basically a tube. This filing section, in case you're curious, is 4 times normal speed. So it's highly accelerated, and I didn't even record all of the filing. I tried to be careful when filing it because I wanted to leave the detail that was on there, but wanted to clean up the smooth sections, and a lot of this is smooth. So it worked out pretty well. It wasn't a tough casting to work on. And again, I labeled this as a custom, but that's kind of exaggerating in a way, since really all I am doing is picking out the detail that's already there. I'm really happy with this casting. I knew I wanted to keep it dark, but not as dark as the original casting. The original, as you may recall from the opening shot there, it's a matte black, and it has a bat logo on it, which that had to go. I wanted to give the color a little more depth than just a black. I end up, and at the end you may disagree with me, I end up coating this in gloss at the end, and I'm kind of second guessing myself now. I might hit it with a matte clear at some point, but I am happy with how this turned out. And there are multiple steps that I use, and in the still shots you can see it at the end, I think. The turntable really doesn't do it justice, But what I did, I hit it with Chaos Black for the primer. I went over it then with the metallic gold. Then over that with the Duplicolor Smoke to darken it and give it that really black kind of look, but with that gold under it. And a lot of the shots, you're not able to see that depth as well as you can, say, in the still shots, that it's not just black. It's just not gray. But there's a little more to it. Now, what I end up doing, this is, after I've already put basically up to the smoke coat on it. I know I'm going to paint the windshield area black, but what I use is the panel line marker to go around the edges of the windshield. And then I just filled in between with black paint. Reason being, I figured that the panel line marker would give me a nice crisp edge around the window, far better than I could do with, say, just a paintbrush. This is the first time I'm trying that because I'm painting the window black. It's not a clear window or anything like that. And it worked. I think it worked pretty well. So I'll definitely do that again in this kind of situation. These situations don't come up all that often, though, where you're painting the windshield black on something. Then I just filled in all the areas where there's vents and things like that with the panel line marker. Hit, as you can see, couple brass dots there on, there's a panel line accent color paint. Hit those with this brass Sharpie for those dots. But again, not a lot of detail. Then on the engine section and this base, this plastic base with the wheels and the front of the engine. The wheels, since I'm not swapping out the wheels, I want to basically fill in what are supposed to be the openings in the wheels, where they're supposed to be more like mags. I mean, that's my interpretation of it. So I ended up using the Citadel contrast paint. And what the contrast paints are, think of a mix between regular Citadel paint and, say, a Nuln Oil wash. It's heavier than the wash, but lighter than the paint. So I put that in there. And I've got a few of these contrast paints that I've used over the years. And God knows they're going to last me a lifetime. Because you don't use that much of it. Nuln Oil, I'll tear through that. But to the contrast paints, not really. Put that in, and then I went over that with the Q-tip, just pulling out the highlights that way. Then I went with this. And what I ended up doing with this brass goldish color is I just dry brush. And what I'm trying to do with the dry brushing on this is to pick up the detail on the suspension around the wheels. I love the detail that they provided on the suspension. I didn't want to flat out paint it because I thought that would look kind of goofy. But yet I want to give it some body. I want to give it some depth. And so dry brushing it, I thought, would be the best way to pick out those details. The downside of dry brushing it with this metallic is it basically flecked a lot of this brass goldish dust around that I then needed to clean up. Once all of that dried, I went over the base with a flat clear. I went over the body that you see there, obviously, with a gloss clear, with the Worth gloss that was shown in that earlier picture. Dry brushed around the exhaust with silver, just to add a little more detail to that section. Then it's a wrap. I also picked out the front of the intake of the engine with that brass goldish color, then hit the tip with a little silverish dry brushing. Again, trying to give it some detail with not flat out printing it and making it look stupid. I really like doing that with dry brushing, kind of like I've picked out interiors dry brushing. I like the effect of the dry brushing. It catches your eye without looking overpainted. And particularly on something like a Batmobile. Yeah, this thing snaps together tight. If it looked like I was forcing it, I was. It's due to the shape of that interior and the way that front of the intake goes through the hole in the front. That thing, without screws, this thing wasn't going anywhere. With the screws, it's definitely not coming apart. It took me a second to get the back screw here to bite. And there are only the 2 posts. I ended up using 172 screws on that because posts are really small. But that's it. You know, I didn't do a lot to this. And I'm kind of thinking about maybe hitting it with a matte coat, you know, masking off the windshield area so it stays shiny. And then just going over it with matte. So here you see the original casting. And with the Bat logo above the cockpit area. I mean, it's a nice looking casting, but it's hiding so much. But I like the matte look to it. So that's the only thing I'm kind of toying with the idea of changing. And I don't know. I'll probably end up leaving it the way it is because I'm pretty happy with this. Here you see the end result. And it may look black, but you'll see what I'm getting at in the glamour shots after this. But you see how the dry brushing of the suspension areas, it isn't too heavy, but yet it's, in my eye, heavy enough. The wheels, I think, look quite a bit better with the contrast paint in them. I just like the look. This looks better to me. I hope it looks better to you too. See, here's a better look at the color. And maybe that gives you an idea of the gold that's actually under that. But I hope you like this build as much as I do. This was fun, and I'm thrilled with it. And I look at these and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to change it from gloss. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there. I'll catch you in the next one.